Ooh, it says live.
She's not saying anything. Okay, juniors. This is my friend Elizabeth. We went to college together at Northwestern in St. Paul. I was a KL major, and she was in some form of the English department. I don't remember what her major was. When I knew her, it was Elizabeth Van Rossum. And then in the meantime, she married someone else I know, Carl, and now she's Elizabeth O'Brien. They have since moved to Japan. Elizabeth is a children's author. She runs her own business, and she and Carl adopted children there. So I'm going to open the floor to Elizabeth to talk to you.
I'm super excited. Thank you so much for letting me Skype it, Google Hangouts in to your class. Yeah, so I have lived in Japan since 2010, and my husband and I we sort of do a lot of things. Technically, we're English teachers, so we teach conversational English, not like grammar and reading and writing, but just what's your name? When's your birthday? Questions like that. What's your favorite movie? We've been doing that since we got here. And yes, I also write children's books, and it's a ton of fun. And I also sell children's books through a different company, which is also a ton of fun. And I have 2 children now. They are both Japanese, adopted here. They're both 4, and they both have Down syndrome. So it's a pretty exciting time around our house. And I don't mind questions at all. You can ask any kind of questions about what that's like. But I am super excited to get the chance to talk to you about communication and in language learning and language in general here in Japan. So if you have questions as I'm going, just write them down, and I promise I won't talk very long, and then you can just ask me anything because I don't mind at all. And I'd rather answer your questions and get you the info that you want. So I did not study Japanese before we moved here. It was sort of a last minute chance of a job opening here to teach English, and so I didn't have any time to study, and I didn't study Japanese culture either. And culture here is so different than in America. Here, communication is so much more subtle and done so much more by body language. I don't remember what the ratio is for communication being spoken versus body language. I know that there's a ratio. I just don't know what it is. But here, I think it's even greater emphasized on how you present yourself. And so learning to not be direct when I speak, learning to be very soft with the words that I choose has been a big challenge. So I'll give you some examples. And we had to learn how to read people a lot differently than in the States. So in the States, obviously, if I ask a question like, hey, do you want to hang out? And someone gives me an answer, I trust that they're gonna be honest and tell me, yeah, sure, no, let's life's busy right now or whatever. But here, if I ask a direct question, people feel put on the spot and they don't want to have to answer that. Or if I ask them a question where the answer might be no, they don't want to say no and offend me. And so learning how to communicate things in a more roundabout manner. When my sister-in-law was here, she was sitting on a chair and she was rocking the chair back and forth on a floor, and the floor was made of straw mats. And so rocking the chair was actually kind of hard on the floor. She didn't realize that. The hostess, instead of saying, hey, could you stop? That might ruin my floor. The hostess said, oh, you look cold. I'm going to go get you a blanket. in my sister-in-law's mind that had nothing to do with anything. But it was the hostess's way of saying, let's change the subject or get you distracted, or there's a problem. Let's not talk about it directly.
So there's a whole different concept of what is rude and what is acceptable.
Yes, very much so. And you'd never want to offend anyone. Never. It's not like in the States at all. Here, you want the other person to be above you. And so you never want to give them a direct no. You don't ever want to be rude in the words that you choose. And so even if someone's wearing like a really odd outfit for the day, you might say, "Oh, your shirt is very red." And that's just your way of drawing attention to the fact that they're wearing something that you don't like, but you're not going to say outright that they have a weird outfit on. And there's different levels of vocabulary here too. So the way that I would talk to my friends is not the way that I would go and talk to the doctor, or the way that I would talk to the doctor is not how I would talk to maybe going to the government offices and having to do paperwork. And the way that I talk to my friends is not even how I would talk to my own kids. There's 4 or 5 levels of vocabulary here, each with their own verb structure and their own vocabulary. And so I might learn how to say a sentence that's completely okay to talk to my friends. And if I were to talk to my boss, it would be considered rude. And so that has been a huge learning experience here because it's so different than the way that we do things.
So here in the States, we have formal language and informal language, but it's okay to kind of go between the two. In Japan, you're saying there's 4 different levels of formality, and you have to be very aware of it because people don't want to offend one another, either in their verbals or nonverbals then.
Exactly, exactly. So coming here was a huge linguistic culture shock. So when we first moved and we were first teaching English, we just sort of blazed ahead in our very American way and didn't realize how many people we were offending because no one was going to tell us that we were offending them by how we were speaking and acting. So we taught English for 2 years in a small town by the sea. And we made friends, but we also had some struggles because of this communication issue. And I had a hard time making friends because you also don't talk about deep things and people aren't very introspective. So if I talk to my girlfriends in America, we talk about anything and everything. And we could talk about, what kind of coffee we had, or we could talk about our deepest, darkest struggles. But here, friendships stay surface for so many years that you don't talk about deep heart issues or political things or religious challenges or anything like that. You just don't, because people keep it very, very surface. And so I struggled with that for a long time too, not being able to open up to people the way I wanted to.
So is it because those things are taboo topics, or is it because it's kind of impertinent or rude to talk about anything personal with someone you don't know?
All of the above, I think, in some degree. People don't think deeply, they're not introspective, so they don't think about issues or how outside issues impact them, or they may not analyze their feelings about a certain stress or anything in their life. But they're also just not comfortable talking about deep things. If I try to, bring up a conversation, they're like, ooh, that's difficult. And then they sort of leave the conversation or they change the subject. So it's a little bit of both, yeah.
Good. Students, do you have any questions? Tell her who you are. Hi, I'm Garrett.
Hi, my name's Garrett.
Ooh.
I was wondering, you said you were child's book writer? How did you get those
Yeah,
published?
good question. I published through CreateSpace, which is Amazon's self-publishing branch, and I have to do all the layout, all the editing, all of the everything, and then I upload it as a PDF file. They print on demand, and so I don't have to pay for an inventory, and I don't have to pay for too many other things. I just send it to them, and then they print it if someone wants to order it. So it's pretty low key, and it's pretty fringe, maybe some people might call, but it's a good option for me currently. I'd love to get picked up by a bigger publisher, but now this is the best option.
Anybody else?
Okay. Hi, I'm Jared. I was just wondering, did you always want to go like internationally, or was it just kind of a spur of the moment thing?
Good question. I always wanted to live overseas, and growing up, I had a lot of diversity in my friendship circles, and so I always was interested in other cultures. But I definitely always wanted to live in Latin or South America. I thought that was like my goal in life. That was what I wanted to do, and then when I met my husband and married him, he's like, actually, I've always wanted to go to Japan, and I've got these roommates from college that are from Japan, so let's go try it for 2 years. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot for 2 years. And then we just sort of have been here since 2010, and it's almost 2018 now. So yeah. I cannot see the classroom. I just see your desk. So I'm not.
Oh, there's another little image down at the bottom. If you click on it, you should be able to see the classroom.
There we go. Look at this fancy high tech.
Weird talking to an empty desk otherwise.
It was kind of disconcerting. Yeah.
So what are some, oh, sorry.
Could you please dismiss the girls basketball players at this time? Please dismiss the girls basketball players at this time. Thank you.
I'm Taryn, and I was wondering, what are some other things that like offend people in like how you stand or hold yourself or what you say? Just like, what are some things that you really have to watch out for?
Yeah, good question. It depends region to region in some cases. Some areas of the country, if you eat while you are walking, that is offensive. So you have to be in a restaurant or in your home and eat. Here where we are currently, you can walk and eat, but people don't usually. But it's not as offensive. Shaking your foot, like when you cross your legs and you just kind of need to shake your foot, relieve stress or whatever. That is what beggars used to do. And so doing it now is offensive. So you don't ever want to point your foot at anybody, show them the bottom of your foot, shake your foot. Nothing to do with feet like that. Those little things are offensive. But thinking that you have the answers to problems and being assertive in direct, those things can also be very offensive to people because you're always supposed to put yourself down and elevate others. And so if I go into a meeting and I'm like, I've got these great creative ideas and I really think it would work well if we did it this way, the rest of the team will just shut down. And so it's best just to sort of float new ideas gently in roundabout ways. So being too American in that sense is kind of a thing.
One of the things when I was in college and went to Japan with the band is Professor Lunak told us to always answer in the affirmative first or in the positive and then go into your negative. That it would be considered incredibly rude to just talk in a negative tone. Yes, that is true. So if someone wants to give me a no answer for something, they'll say, yeah, that's really difficult.
And I'm supposed to understand that that means no. In my problem solving mind, I want to be like, oh, let's fix that problem then. But that's not what they're saying. But yes, if someone's thinking about an answer to a question that I've asked, they'll use a word that means, yes, that's right. But in the context, it means I'm thinking about it, kind of an answer. So yeah, you always try to keep things away from negatives, especially a direct no, especially that.
So when you and Carl are teaching English classes or having a small group together and you're teaching Japanese speakers how to speak American, how do you address that? Like, how do you correct your students or even explain that concept to them that in America we're very, very abrupt?
Yeah. We really encourage them, first of all, to have confidence in their speaking and that mistakes are okay. So we want them to feel equipped right away that they can just try anything. So right away, we're trying to lay the groundwork that if they tell us no or something like that, it's okay. It's not offensive to us. And so we try to just ask questions and encourage conversations and pull responses from them in ways that help them speak directly. And we tell them Americans are loud and messy and we emote all over the place. I mean, we phrase it a little bit differently, but we try to bring in American culture as we teach so that they understand this is who we are and this is why we speak the way we do. So just trying to make the environment a place where they feel safe to speak their mind. And a lot of people tell us it's easier to talk about deep issues in English. There's a student of mine who's 68 years old, I think. She's my inspiration because she's studying English just so that she can talk to any foreigners that she happens to meet. And she tells me it is easier to talk about politics and religion in English because she wouldn't be brave enough to do it in Japanese. So they understand that there is this switch and this cultural difference. And so that's made it easier in one sense as well.
All right, I'm Zach. So where do you teach?
I currently teach in a just Saturdays in a international preschool that has a Saturday class. It's open to different ages, but I have taught everybody from preschool for a year and a half here, and I've taught high schoolers and adults and kids, but they have these things called language schools where that's mostly what we've done is teaching in a language school.
So in American schools, you know this, you don't really get into foreign language until, for some kids, fortunate, middle school, for some high school. For where you are at, where would people usually begin their foreign language instruction if they're getting it in school? Is it typical for them to get it in preschool like what you're talking about? Or does it come later on?
There's a big status thing where if you can send your kids to an English-speaking preschool or kindergarten, then you are in the upper echelon of society and your kids speak English. It doesn't matter why. So there are completely English preschools, which is what we've done. We've worked in. My husband works there now. But there's also the JET program, which is, I don't even remember what it stands for now. Japanese English Teachers, I guess. But the government of Japan wants to bring English education in. And so they have teachers, foreign teachers from English-speaking countries come in. And so kindergartens and elementary schools might get English once a month. But they're starting it as a school subject now from 4th grade. They're really pushing English now because of the Olympics coming and nobody here can speak English very well. So it's now mandatory starting from 4th grade elementary school. But they're still only getting it maybe once a week. And it's not necessarily taught by someone who actually speaks English. It's taught by their homeroom teacher. But it's an actual gradable subject starting in junior high school. It's mandatory. But again, it's not always taught by someone who speaks English. It's taught by their homeroom teacher.
Hi, I'm Garrett again. I was wondering, when you went there, did you learn Japanese like in a classroom, like you're teaching, or did you kind of just pick it up along the way with a little bit of instruction in between?
Both, actually. We tried just learning it organically with friends and conversation, and that was proving to be super difficult. And so we did take a class, and then we moved to this region, and we've been taking private lessons on and off, and studying on our own on and off. But Japanese is one of the most difficult languages for English speakers to learn. I guess Spanish is easy. You only need about 400 classroom hours. Japanese, you need 2,400 hours. So there's a huge difference, and it's super, super difficult language.
Hi, I'm Andrea, and I heard that over in China that they have, with teachers, they only give them a book to learn from and they don't actually teach anything. Is that the same in Japan?
No, there's teacher education schools and colleges. You have to have a degree, a license to teach here. And if you want to be a kindergarten teacher or preschool teacher, you have to go through a lot of testing. And you actually also have to be able to play the piano if you want to be a kindergarten or preschool teacher, which I would fail at. But yes, teachers here have to be licensed and they have to go through a university program. But teacher burnout rate here is incredibly high, and a lot of teachers actually wind up in mental hospitals because of stress, because they're usually at school from maybe 6 or 7 in the morning until maybe 10 at night. And there is no summer break for them. There's no winter break. They work through, and they're Saturdays as well. And if one of their students gets in trouble with the police, the teacher is the one that is responsible, not the parents. So the police will come to the teacher, and the teacher will, if the punishment is like an in-school suspension or something, the teacher is the one that has to be with the student the whole time. So while teachers are respected and teachers are licensed, they're also incredibly stressed out here, and I feel horrible for them. It's a stressful job.
They're all kind of in shock about that.
Yeah,
I had a student who's not able to be here today who wanted to know how difficult it is to get involved in international adoptions. Is that something you'd be willing to address?
I would love to talk about that. Yeah. Doing it domestically within Japan has not been that difficult because we're working with a nonprofit organization that's already here. They're already established. And so far, we haven't actually done anything through the United States government. So our children are still Japanese citizens. So keeping it within Japan has been pretty painless, I guess. We had to do a lot of paperwork, a lot of applications and background checks and getting documents from the States, like a criminal background check, child abuse check. And then the agency looked at all of our stuff. They came and did a home study. They came and interviewed us. We had to go through 3 sets of interviews of 3 hours each, which was pretty intense. They just want to know everything about you to see if you're good parents or would be good parents. And then on that side, the agency, then they placed our first son with us when he was a baby. And then after that, then we went through Japanese family court. That was a whole nother process of applications and paperwork and their home check and going through the judge there. But we didn't have to appear before a judge or anything. We just had to have some interviews with the caseworker. And starting all that again with round 2 with our daughter who's just arrived 2 2 weeks ago. So yeah, so it's not that complicated here. Just because we are keeping it all within the country. Once we start trying to immigrate our kids and get them U.S. citizenship, then it's going to get even more complicated. So I'm not looking forward to the more paperwork part of it.
Questions, guys? Oh, they really want to know what time it is there.
It is 6:22 a.m. on Saturday. I'm 15 hours ahead of you. So I woke up at 4 a.m. to do the mic check.
My name is Jalen. I was wondering how different it is. Like, do your kids talk yet?
That's a really good question. You mean because they have Down syndrome?
No, I mean because like or just of like in Japanese or English or anything.
Yeah. That is a really good question because that's a very pertinent issue for our family. We use English in our home. We aren't strict about it. We have Japanese picture books and we use some vocabulary with them here. But when we leave the house and anything that we do outside, going to the doctor, going to the park and playing with friends, my son's in preschool here, that's all in Japanese. And so we try to switch over for them as much as possible. We also use sign language to help with communication. So our kids are actually getting 3 languages, which has slowed them down in their ability to produce language, but it has really given them the chance to understand better. So I can sign a word and say it in English, and my son will say it in Japanese. So he understands that this one concept means these 3 words, or these 3 words mean this one concept. And so he's functioning in 3 languages right now. Our daughter doesn't know Japanese yet, even though she is Japanese. She was raised by Americans so far. So she's just using English and signing. But it's a kind of a crazy way of communicating, 3 different languages going on.
We have about 4 minutes of class left, and there will probably be announcements coming over the last minute or so. Before we stop the recording for these kids, I'll stay on and chat with you a little bit. Is there any big thing you want them to know?
Come to Japan and come try it out, because I know that it sounds intimidating by what I've probably said, and it might sound negative, but the beauty and the magic of this country is like nothing I've seen, and a chance to get out of the States and learn what it means to communicate with someone who's so completely different than you has been the most valuable thing in my life thus far. Just being able to get outside of my own head, get outside of myself, and really work hard to establish a relationship with someone when both of us are just using a few words. So I would really, really encourage you guys, if you have a chance to study abroad or get a job or take a gap year or something like that, just leave the States and come and do something amazing like that. That would be my parting word.
The history club trip. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's this summer. And you're going to Italy this year. Italy and Greece. We have 4 kids here going to Europe. 5.
Cool.
Okay.
Super cool.
Well, I'm going to end our recording there.